It has been many years since Teeka Lewis vanished from the New Frontiers lanes in Tacoma, Washington. Teeka was only 2 years old when she vanished from the bowling alley located along the 4700th block of Tacoma Center Street. While out with her family on January the 23rd, 1999, the evening the Teeka went missing, the bowling alley was particularly busy that night because it was a league night. Teeka's family was positioned near the center of the lanes, occupying lanes 7 and 8. This would put them close to the center of the alley itself and allowed them to keep a sight on Teeka, who kept wandering back and forth from the bowling alley's arcade. With multiple kids around, family members were taking turns keeping an eye on Teeka and others who kept wandering back and forth from the bowling alley's arcade area. She was last seen wearing a green Tweety Bird sweatshirt or t-shirt, white sweatpants, and a black and white Air Jordan sneakers, hair pulled back in ponytails, carrying a clear purse with a fish design containing Starburst candies. Teeka was drawn to the claw game, and with the help of her uncle, she won a teddy bear, which she kindly gave to her 10-month-old sister that night. Teeka returned multiple times to the arcade using coins she had in her purse, which she got with some recent Christmas money. Amidst all her family and approximately 6 feet from the building's exit, Teeka seemingly vanished into thin air while just 10 feet away from her mother, Teresa Lewis. While family and friends bowled, the little girl played at the wheel of the video arcade game. Teresa Lewis says she looked away from her baby girl for less than a minute, and when she looked back, she was gone. She was discovered missing just before 10 o'clock p.m. A 15-hour extensive search ensued, leaving limited clues as to where Teeka went. Search dogs led investigators to a pile of men's clothing stashed underneath a bush across the street from the bowling alley where Teeka was taken. Law enforcement believed that the clothing had not been there for long and described the items with either IS or JS written on the back label as initials, but they couldn't tie it directly to her case. Over the next several years, an extensive search would be organized and annual vigils held to bring awareness to her case. Teeka's family would even go on to work with legislators to pass Teeka's bill legislation that created a multi-agency task force within the Washington State Patrol responsible for accompanying local and regional law enforcement when dealing with reports of both missing and exploited children. A witness came forward and told the authorities that an unidentified individual in a maroon Pontiac Grand Am sped out of the parking lot around the same time it was discovered that Teeka was missing. The car was described as possibly a four-door late 1980 or early 90s model with dark-tinted windows and a large spoiler. One witness recalled that a white man in his 30s with shoulder-length brown hair, facial pockmarks, a mustache, and a large nose was following the child near the exit that night. In addition to identifying the man with the pockmarked face, investigators have never been able to find the car or tie anyone to it. Therefore, they are still looking for help on this. A security guard claims that they saw this individual in the bowling alley previously and assumed it was the girl's father. However, earlier that day, an unidentified man attempted to abduct 2 children from a local park roughly only a mile away from the bowling alley. The children's father chased this unidentified individual away, but reported that he was driving a blue 1995 Pontiac Grand Am. He only reported the incident 3 days after it happened, when he learned of Teeka's case being circulated in the media. New Frontiers was often crowded, especially on the weekends, but in a sea of people, one was memorable to a witness named John, who was 17 at the time. "We'd gone to that bowling alley plenty of times," he says. "It's the kind of place where people can go with their families, and kids just roam," he says. "I had to use the restroom, so I went towards the restrooms there, and this guy bumped into me. He was very rude. He had this little girl, and he was white. The little girl was mixed. I just thought it was her father, rushing his daughter to the restroom." John says the moment struck with him because the man bumped into his shoulder, didn't bother to apologize, and he hit him pretty hard. He seemed to be in a rush. The rest of the night went on and seemed normal until John and his family walked out to leave and noticed the police in the parking lot. John says officers didn't disclose what or who they were looking for, and a couple of days later, John saw the little girl from the bowling alley plastered all over the news. That was when he realized the man he had seen the child with had later known to be Teeka's abductor, and it wasn't her father. Now the 2-year-old was gone, and John felt absolutely helpless, but he knew he had to say something. He was interviewed by the police on January 1999, but never heard anything after that. He often wondered if the information was irrelevant or not useful to law enforcement. It wasn't until 2 decades later that a cold case investigator combing through thousands of pages in the case file came across John's information and instantly knew it was significant. The witness actually describes an encounter with Teeka with this individual, and it's not generic. It's specific and it's detailed and unique enough that the description can maybe identify the last person who maybe had contact with Teeka, says Detective Stephen Ropel. When Ropel contacted John, his memory of the man's face remained the same. A gentleman with pockmarks. He was holding this little girl's hand, and when he bumped into me, and I was thinking this is the rudest person in the world, says John. Pockmarks could be the key. I was unfamiliar with this individual with the pockmark face, so as I was reading through the file and saw that it wasn't thought as important earlier right away, I thought maybe this is the one piece of information that could have more to it, says Ropel. And when the detective kept combing through the file, he found another tip that stuck out to him. This one came in while a news crew was at the bowling alley. About a week after Teeka's disappearance, they were filming a reenactment down at the bowling alley, and someone who was standing there watching noticed a person with a pockmarked face who was also watching the reenactment, and the witness who called in thought he was acting strangely, says Ropel. At the time, there would have been no way for the caller to know a man with pockmarks had come up in the investigation earlier. Lieutenant Ropel said the man they're looking for to identify is white, 5 feet 11 inches tall, with a husky build. He's described as having shoulder-length curly hair that's brown and a thick mustache and a heavily pockmarked face. The night of Teeka's disappearance, he was wearing a blue plaid shirt and faded jeans. When asked where he gets his determination on a case that's already been worked on by many of his predecessors, Ropel's answer is simple. Teeka's mother, Teresa Lewis. It really makes it easy to try and keep the case alive for her and to try to find her some answers, he said. She has never given up on her daughter, finding her daughter, and I really admire that. Teresa Lewis says she finally feels that she has a detective who will get answers, but she knows the answers may be darker and more earth-shattering than she's ever been allowed herself to consider. Nobody will know the pain that I felt when he told me this. Nobody, she said. For decades, Teresa has held on to hope that whoever took her was wanting to raise her and love her. She says the information Ropel has shared with her about the witness account of the pockmarked man has forced her to confront a horrific reality. She says, that man went in to find somebody, to find a child and to harm that child, she says. And that man took my child, my everything. That was my world right there. Years later, Teresa's world is still shattered. She still has Teeka's coat that she wore to the bowling alley that night, the Pooh Bear she was so attached to. That's all that she has left. I've lived over 20 years in a nightmare, she says, and I think it has to come to an end, she said. I want to bring her home, regardless if she's here or not. It's time for her to bring her home. New Frontier Lanes has now been torn down, and the former bowling alley where the toddler was last seen is now the parking lot of a Home Depot. Lewis still holds vigils at the site for her daughter. Teeka's family, friends, and the community light candles in her honor and plead for information and closure to the case. Tacoma police described the man as a white male, 30 to 40 years old, with curly brown hair, a mustache, and a pockmarked face. Police will only say that they want to identify the man, but are not calling him a suspect or a person of interest. Police released the description years to the day that Teeka went missing. Teeka's mother, Teresa Lewis, said police showed her a picture of the man back in November, and she instantly recognized him. I remember that guy from the bowling alley, she said, and if that's the case, there's no way Teeka is here right now, she told the news. She said that the man seemed like someone she wouldn't want around her children. She said that the man followed a Facebook page that she runs dedicating to finding Teeka. Robert Lewis, Teeka's father, said the news details have left him with more questions for police. Many more questions, he said, than I can even ask. But he also said that he would not jump to any conclusions about Teeka's whereabouts until police released more information. I'm not convinced, I need something tangible, and I'm not willing to give up my hope, he said. Unfortunately, Teeka didn't get to spend much time with her family, at least not as much time as she should have, in order to develop her own personality and show off her true self to her loved ones. But in her brief amount of time with her loved ones, Teeka would begin to grow into a loving and caring child who doted on her younger sister and constantly clung to her mother. Teeka was described as a shy and quiet girl who didn't like to be picked up by people she didn't know, or even people she barely knew for that matter. Her mother Teresa would later recall that she cried when aunts and uncles tried to pick her up and hold her. Speaking to the Seattle Times, Teresa stated she wouldn't go outside on her own. She's a mama's girl. She sleeps with me and her blankie, and if I'm not there, she's crying, and if she doesn't have her blankie, she's crying. By 2006, a $27,000 reward for information was being offered by Tacoma Pierce County Crime Stoppers, and while investigators were still actively receiving tips, the investigation had reached a virtual standstill years earlier. Police would receive more than 700 tips in the first few years that Teeka went missing and would end up investigating leads in several states. The case would even be featured on several true crime television shows, including America's Most Wanted, which aired segments of Teeka on at least 3 times throughout 1999. In 2008, police would begin releasing additional photos and videos of Teeka in an effort to raise awareness for Teeka's case. The following year, in 2009, Teeka's face would be plastered on the side of semi-trucks driving through the United States, which was part of a joint effort between the Washington State Patrol and Gordon Trucking to raise awareness for her case and others from the state. During a vigil held on the 11th year anniversary of Teeka's disappearance, which was 2010, a man would tell Teeka's mother, Teresa, about a vision he had about the missing girl, claiming to know where she was. Teresa, who had never seen this man before, said that what the man told her was unnerving enough to the point of her forwarding the information to the police, who began looking into the man and his claims. Following through on the information received, police would conduct a search of the nearby Point Defiance Park, digging up a roughly 8 by 12 foot garden of the grounds of the native gardens. They would not find anything during this dig or subsequent searches of the area, and would later arrange to speak to the man, who was only described as a man in his early 40s that lived in the Puget Sound. Since he wasn't being arrested or charged with any crime, police would refuse to release any additional information about the man. In the 2 decades since her disappearance, Teresa has continued to live up to her word and has been one of the few driving forces in this case, holding public vigils on the anniversary of Teeka's disappearance every single year and holding other events throughout the year, including Teeka's birthday, the 4th of July. She has provided DNA to genealogical websites in the hopes that Teeka perhaps is still alive out there. One day attempts to find her own genetic heritage. And Teeka, Mommy loves you and misses you wherever you are. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about you. I'll never give up the search for you. I love you, Teeka, her mom says. In recent years, Teresa has begun to temper her expectations, believing that Teeka might have died shortly after being abducted from the bowling alley. But her and Teeka's father, Robert, continue to hold out hope that Teeka will be returned to them at some point. At the very least, they hope that answers can be found in her case, and with the revelations from 2020, they believe that they are closer than ever to finding out what happened to her missing daughter. Teeka Latres Lewis was born on July the 4th, 1996, to her parents Teresa Inglis and Robert Lewis. Teresa had 4 other children, including a sister for Teeka that was born about a year and a half after her. But unfortunately, Robert wouldn't be a large part of Teeka's early life, being convicted for theft and being sentenced to 4 years in jail. Teeka was a multiracial child, having Black, white, and Native American ancestry. Her father, Robert, was Black, and her mother, Teresa, was part Chippewa Native American. She would be treated for asthma and allergies as a toddler at the Indian Health Practitioners, a nationwide clinic made available for Native Americans, which operated a tribal health authority in nearby Puyallup. She has a large birthmark on her left buttocks and red natural highlights in her hair. She has patches of light discoloration on her face and the left side of her buttocks as the result of eczema. Teeka has facial dimples and pierced ears, black eyes, and brown hair. She was 3 feet tall and weighed approximately 35 pounds when she vanished. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact the Tacoma Police Department at 253-798-4721 or the Tacoma Police Crime Tips 253-591-5959, or if you wish to remain anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS, that's 1-800-222-8477, or you can use the P3 Tips app on your smartphone, and there's a $1,000 cash reward for results in this case.